Hello guys, welcome to Ethereum Parrot. From my past video, you might have noticed that I am quite bearish, but that bearishness, let me clarify, is for the short term. I'm looking for a pullback. We've been having 35% plus move to the upside, and we are overdue for some sort of pullback. Some people taking profits, and at the same time, as we discussed 2 days ago, this current move seems to be fueled purely, and most of the moves that are fueled by futures tend to not live for very long, at least according to statistics. And the reason for that is because people that are doing futures are not necessarily planning to hold very long a position with a contract. They tend to pull out eventually and take some profits. And as we saw in the past week, the spot aggregated buying, and we can see that we came precisely from where we came from this area around 26.9. The buying on spot peaked at 35, and since then, even if the price is moving higher, on spot people are selling. And we see the opposite situation on futures, where we see some selling on futures, but it's still holding strong above the previous highs, meaning that these positions in long on futures are still open. Don't be fooled, these people are not gonna hold a contract position forever. That's not in question. The point is, when are they going to start taking profits? In today's video, we're going to be looking into different models. I will also review the CPR monthly, and it's going to tell us potential targets for the month of November, including the downside. And why not? Let's look at how high things could continue going if the price remains in the overbought area. Let's face it, not having enough interest from spot is usually a bad sign, but it's not the last word in terms to say this cannot continue going higher. A word of caution, as I mentioned in my last video. Basically, this move comes with an expiration date. We don't know the date, but we know it will eventually expire. If we look at CoinGlass, we can see that in the last week, there's a lot of liquidity accumulating at 34K. Whales are going to be quite attracted to push the price to 34K to liquidate some longs. Obviously, when we get there, we will have to be looking for what could be the next move. By looking at the 1 month, we can see that that level of liquidity is right there below this sideways price action. There are some levels of accumulation around 29.4. It's less likely, but it's all on the table. And if there was some sort of massive pullback, we can see that right above 26K, where this move started, is obviously where all the liquidity is waiting there to be taken. Nothing is guaranteed in terms of how long it will take for the price to come here. Maybe it will never come back there, but something tells me that that liquidity eventually is going to be taken. When I look at fire charts, I can see that there is massive accumulation at 40, and some levels at 30K have been pulled out. And this is bullish. Usually, when you see these levels becoming really strong color, and when the price starts approaching into it, they pull out, it's usually because they know that the price will come there, and they pull out those orders right before it happens. So that 38K, that's one thumbs up for a potential move towards that area. If we look at the day and we look at the CBD, we can hide all the elements and just leave the big whales. You can see during the day that they have done some big buys. Interestingly, the price is coming down precisely when the big whales are buying. So it could be that all the other players are actually selling while the big whales are buying even more. Something to take note as well. If we look at high block capital, the level of 34 is not as highlighted as the level of 27.9, which spans to 26.4. Again, that's the beginning of the move. If we go to the 7 days, we can see that the 34 is coinciding with CoinGlass. So the 34 is a more likely area that the price can reach, and the 26 to 27, less likely, but still on the table. looking at trading light, we can see that some areas are accumulating with bigger orders at 42K, and that started 6 hours ago that they started putting larger orders at 42K. Another thing I'm looking for is to see big wicks to the upside, like these areas here, precisely where we are, interpreting that as some potential rejection. For the green scenario, I remind you that I'm expecting to see the price still to come to the green area, ending at the 31K, the last area of support, to remain within the higher range. Losing this range here obviously take us back into the previous range where we spent almost 6 months. The injections of liquidity, they top yesterday and currently are coming back down, so potentially there's going to be a cool off in terms of global macroeconomy injections of liquidity. As I promised, we're going to have a look at the CPR monthly, extremely important model to be looking at least a few times a month to identify not just the pivots which act as support or resistance, but also the levels of actual support and resistance, these lines in green and in red that remain in the same position throughout the month, and we use them to interpret not just what could happen during this month, but also it gives us some very valid clues for what's to come in the next 1 or 2 months. During October, we said that we started the month with a virgin CPR. A virgin CPR means that you start the month without touching the white lines, the pivots. We have 3 pivots and we spend almost half the month without touching them. We have rejection on the first levels of resistance, the green lines, and that pushes us back down. We held beautifully the pivots, and that helped this move to play out to the top of the range. We also say that this was a very narrow CPR for the monthly, which meant that there was going to be an explosive move. So all the things that CPR told us at the beginning of the month in October ended up playing out. Number 1, the explosive move did happen. Number 2, we say holding the pivots was going to be bullish. And the interpretation right after a month like this that we need to do is we are again in a virgin month. So we haven't touched in November any of the pivots. The first pivot starts from 33.4. So I'll say that 33.4 is a 99.999% chances that throughout the month of November, it could happen in the very last day, but at some point, 33.4 needs to be touched. That could be even after a move to the top of the range. The top of the range spans from 37.6 to 46.5. Unbelievable. It's been more than a year that we don't see these numbers on Bitcoin, and CPR is saying that those levels are on top of the table. If the price was to make a move again to the upside, it could reach those levels, which is incredible. Now, to the downside, if we lose the pivots, meaning that if we close a single candle below the lowest pivot and we touch the red, we enter in the bearish territory. The bearish territory starts from 28.9. So below 29, we start confirming that there are higher chances that we visit the lower end, the lower lines, which are located at 23.4 and even 20.1, where we have the CME gap waiting still. But it could perfectly be that throughout the month of November, if we come here and break below, that we remain there. And in December or maybe in January, on the new levels of CPR of those months, we end up touching the lower levels. In other words, it doesn't need to happen throughout November. But touching this level, the 29, already spells some bad aura on top of Bitcoin. The weekly RSI Bitcoin has closed the week above 70 and now is pointing up to a humble 71. We are on Thursday, and next Sunday we need to see where is this RSI closing. Is it closing above 70? One story. Is it closing back below 70? Completely different story, because usually closing below that 70 will be a confirmation that we are in one of these scenarios of a pullback like we had in November before halving, or this one here, which was the all-time high of Bitcoin in 2021, or more recently, we have a 70 on the 10th of April, precisely on my birthday. Thanks so much, Bitcoin. I insist that if we get on Sunday a close below 70, it's high likely that we're going to approach somewhere around this area to do a retest of this trend line. If things remain bullish, they can remain bullish until we are still above RSI 50, which coincides with the trend line. Anything below, even a slightly close below on Sunday, somewhere in this area on the 45 RSI, which probably is going to be something like a 24K, 25K. Of course, that is really bearish. And it's going to mean that we are going to have some difficulties for a few months to recover from something like that. Think about it, being on 36K and then going back to 25 is something that not many people are going to take in a good way. Looking a bit more at smart money concepts, we can see that we are doing higher highs. Unfortunately, the momentum is coming down. The volume as well is coming down. So all those things are things to take note and not ignore. They're not sufficient by themselves, but we start gaining some sort of big, larger, longer list of things that are looking bearish. If we look at Bookmap, you can see that currently we have more sellers, around 10K more sellers than buyers, starting from the beginning of the day in UTC time zone. We can also see that this support that made the move towards the 36, all this liquidity here is no longer there. For example, at 34.2, currently we have 175, and I guarantee you that this orange that was there was way larger at that point, which was the fuel that was needed to get to 36K. That is currently no longer there. If the price comes back to 34K, these tricky whales might put back that liquidity there, but you need to be using the tool and monitoring in real time what the sneaky bastards are planning really to do. Currently, the largest order on Bookmap that I'm seeing is at 32K with 742, which is double the amount that we see at 33 and also larger than the 34. So that's also interesting. The 34K is located around here. If you're using Lux Algo price action concepts as well, the 32K is because of this order block form around here. In terms of the RSI, if you've been following me on Twitter, I mentioned about this breakout when we were below 35K and we made a massive move to the upside, which was, we had the hint right before it happened. I published it 1 hour before, and currently we are retesting the same trend line on the 4 hour. So this is extremely time sensitive because from around here, anything can happen. From around here, you need to keep your eyes open. There can be here another push to the upside on the RSI, which obviously means the price also going up. But also, if we close below this trend line, the chances that this was just a fake out, a liquidity grab. Remember, I mentioned that the price sometimes tends to come right above the breakout area. Retail do that a lot, and they just trap the traders there to dampen them. I'm not saying that just because we went above, that's going to happen, but that could be a potential outcome. But what matters the most right now is whether the RSI is closing below this trend line, because that gives us a strong clue on whether this breakout was a fake out or is still healthy and can continue pushing to the upside and then hit those higher levels. That is the biggest clue that you can have. Personally, I think we can still push once more, but we are running out of arguments to keep pushing the price higher. Of course, there's BlackRock and there's all these things. There can be crazy price action if it gets approved anytime. But from the technicals, we're kind of running out of time to confirm that this can break out to higher levels. We have strong level of resistance here, and this is really calling for a move like this to reset all the different momentum indicators, RSI, to take the liquidity from all the leg longs and all that stuff. So this is a matter of probabilities. I don't know the future, but in my opinion, I tend to do much better if I go with the highest likelihood scenario rather than just praying for the price to keep going higher just because I want to. If you look at the past performance of the whole history of Bitcoin using the Fibonacci MA channels, like the one I'm showing you, you can see that there has been no exception. Usually you have a dump around here at the capitulation event during the bear market, which is all the circles in orange coinciding with this around here. And then later, on the early stage of the bull market, we have a move to the upside followed by some retracement. If we measure these retracement periods, they are no smaller than 46%. In March of 2012, we have a retracement of 46. In 2015, we have another 46. In COVID, of course, it's a black swan event. It was 72% from the top. And in my opinion, we haven't had that move in this cycle. So this was the capitulation. You can argue that it's there, or you could argue that it's on FTX. Never mind, you can take both together. But in my opinion, what I will expect is a move of 46% somewhere starting from around here. That could be November, December, January. It might never happen, not financial advice, but I'm sharing what I think is most likely based on past performance. A 47% from here will take us to 18.7, and I'm not saying that number because this could run a little bit higher. It could run to 40k and dump from there and going back to 25k. So you never know when it's going to start dumping, but what you do know is that there usually is a last shakeout, not what I will call a small shakeout. It's still a large shakeout in the early stage of the bull market. Whether you believe that that's not going to happen this time, that's totally up to you. And just to end this video, I'm going to give you some very important information coming from OnChain Data. We usually monitor the network value transaction. We have this indicator, network value transaction, that is for free on the Trading Parrot account on TradingView. And I also monitor the number of unique addresses that appear for the first time in a transaction. Both are currently giving a bearish read. So we've been having sell signals since beginning of October and a big sell signal on the 11th. Right after that, we push higher. Can that happen? Yes, it did happen as well here. But eventually, when you start seeing that this goes from red and back into the green, you start having the pullback, which is more or less what I'm expecting. In terms of the number of unique addresses that appear for the first time in a transaction in the network, we had a breakout that was very bullish right at the bottom here that kind of hinted that we were going to push higher. But right after the movement started, then the number of unique addresses went massively down. So currently, we're breaking down in terms of this indicator, which is bearish. Okay, it's pointing up, but we lost a lot of momentum in terms of interest in the network. So another thing to put in the notes in terms of what's about to happen in the next weeks and months. S&P and Nasdaq are currently holding support, in particular on the S&P. We said in the past video that we are testing this trend line and that I'm expecting to see some move to the upside from here just because we have been doing only red. That doesn't make it bullish. It only implies that people are buying at support, but this doesn't become bullish until you do a higher high. In other words, not seeing a move above 46, it's a confirmation that we are in a bearish structure. The momentum might find resistance here, RSI at 55, ready for the final dump. Guys, if you really want to support the channel, apart from hitting the like, subscribing, and enabling the notification bell, and leaving a comment down below, which really helps, have a look at the description. Most of the indicators I'm showing are either included in the membership with the TTP. You can have a look at the tradingparrot.com to find more detail on what's included on each of the tiers. But also many of the indicators that I use are third party and you can find them in the description with the best discounts. For example, let Lux Algo that I use for smart money concepts, great bonuses for TradingView, discounts on the fees on most of the exchanges that I use, trading bot platforms like AllTrading with Hunter that you can run for free with the partnership what we have, Bookmap if you want to see in real time where the orders are, hardware wallet that I use, CoinStats to keep track of all your exchanges, or Bitrefill to use your crypto to even go to the supermarket. Have a look at the link in the description. Really cool selection of crypto products. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.